I also wonder, like, what if we just experimented with cold openings? Just like jumping right
I
in.
think we could. The AI one is funny because I have a recent story. A friend of ours who used to work at Google, and is in this friend group that we all meet for like potlucks once a week, and we're there. She moved away, so she's up in Washington now. But she like sends us a message to one of the group chats while we're all there, and people just gradually pull out their phone and start laughing, and then everybody just starts laughing. So the story was this. So she's got one of the Google audio, like she says, okay, Google, what's the weather going to be for tomorrow? She's got her kids there. She's doing whatever. She's trying to figure this out. And Google goes, tomorrow will be sunny with a high of 69. She goes, oh, wow, 69 is hot. And Google goes, yes, 69 is a sexual position where, and she's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Because somehow the phrase 69 is hot hit their AI interpretation to move it into the part of the latent space that is about various sexual positions. Despite the fact, she has her 10-year-old and her 8-year-old and her 6-year-old there, and she's just trying to stop it as quickly as she can. Yeah. But, technology, right?
Oh, good.
That has nothing to do with what we want to talk about today, but maybe it's fodder for something.
That'd be a cold opening for sure.
Speaking of 69, welcome to the Recession Show.
Welcome to the Recession Show. Yeah, so we are coming to you today. We're recording this on Wednesday, April 30th. Now, this morning, there were two big economic things that were announced. One was the number of new jobs in the last month, which by ADP, and it came in way below expectations. The other was GDP over Q1. This is the advanced estimate. It will be revised, but it came in as negative. Now, if you're in tech, you've been facing hard times for a while. We've all been kind of talking about that in different ways. But, happy Trump recession day for all who celebrate. We're in it now. It's going to get worse for a while. There's a lot of supply chain related stuff that's coming down the pipe. And so the thing we were thinking about talking about today was career resiliency. How do you set yourself up to be able to sustain yourself, find work, or income, or however you're measuring that throughout the ups and downs that are going on, not only in our industry, but across the entire economy and world right now. Basically, how do you handle a down market or recession? And the lucky thing about the three of us talking about it is we're old. We've been through some of these before. A lot of people in tech have not been through, or I should speak for myself, though. I'm looking at the gray hairs in Nick's beard, and I said I could speak for you too, Amy. Amy, you're like, young and beautiful, and we don't have to worry about it, right? But at least two of us are old. Now we talk kids. We're all old relative to the tech industry. The way the tech industry's expanded, more than half of people in our industry probably listening to this show have not experienced a recession before. Other than sort of COVID, but that was weird and it bounced back, and tech actually did really well during that. So, as someone who came out of school shortly after the 2001 tech downturn, who went through 2008, 2009, I've been through a few of these. I know you two both have been through some of this. So let's kind of lay that out there. When you think about career resiliency, handling downturns, making sure, like, what comes to mind for you?
I just want to contest that I'm not old.
Okay.
In 2000, I got my first job out of college in 2009, and I was still living with my parents and didn't really experience any negativities
Nick,
from that.
Are you the youngest one here? I graduated in 2003.
From college or?
Sorry, from high school. From high school,
Oh.
but my point is, I missed the 2001 recession that KBall mentioned, and then I graduated in 3.5 years. So I was back in like the real world in 2006.
Nice.
So I was able to get hired before the 2008 recession happened with all the housing market and everything like that. So
nice.
In some ways, I don't even feel like I've really experienced a recession, just because tech has been so protected, I feel like, up until maybe a couple of years ago, when everybody started using the economic situation as an opportunity to downsize or kind of reevaluate their resources.
Yes. I'm basically 2 years behind you. I graduated high school in '05, did college in 3.5 years, and then got my first job in '09, which, because I was relatively sheltered from that.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
yeah.
so I should have just opened with I'm old. And but all right.
I'm glad we established that.
How old we are. Oh, man.
All right.
Yeah,
so
I think, well, your original question was, okay, what are your thoughts? And I'll admit there's some like, oh crap, this is not going to be fun thoughts going through my head. And so the second thought is, okay, what do you do about that to make sure that you're resilient, that you're not caught in a bad spot, and that you can still provide for your family?
yes,
How do you do that?
how do you do that?
Well, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is I'm just making sure that my skills are sharp. I love building stuff on the side. So if I can build something on the side that's going to provide an opportunity for me. I mentioned this to KBall earlier. The last 3 jobs that I've had, I've not really had to interview for, which I know comes from a place of privilege. But because I'm doing things out in the open, because I'm building side projects, companies have said, we already know what you're capable of. You don't need to do take-home assignments. You don't need to explain or sit in this interview because you have a whole course where you're talking through how all of this works. So even if your side project doesn't become the next full-time thing for you, there's still value in what you're creating.
There's a piece of that also that, is about establishing a track record of getting something done. And I used to just say this mostly to like new people getting into the industry of like, okay, you don't have a job history to show what you've done, so go out and make something else, make something in public, write something, do something like that. But now I would increasingly recommend to anyone in the industry, make sure there is a publicly findable track record of what you've done. That could be a strong LinkedIn profile where you're connected to real people or things like that. But the context here is, I have been in a hiring manager role recently. And in today's world, a ridiculously large number of job applications are completely bogus resumes that appear to have been made up by an LLM. And they'll include like a link to a LinkedIn profile that if you go there, it 404s because LinkedIn has removed it because they figured out it was fake and other different things. But it's just flooding the zone with junk. And so I found myself sometimes just doing a screen where I'm like, can I determine that this is actually a real person? And the first level of that is, can I search for them on LinkedIn? Can I find a social media presence that looks real? Can I find any history of projects? And if you're not able to clear that bar, unfortunately, in the way the world is right now, if I don't have another reason to believe you're human, I'm going to assume that you are a fake resume getting thrown at me by one of these, I don't know even who's sending this. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. But it means that if you want to be able to get a new job, you need some way to essentially prove, yes, you're real and you've done work in the industry.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's tough with that AI thing. And I think that a lot, like anecdotally, I've seen a lot of people posting that like they've got to overcome the AI to even get in front of a person in a lot of ways. Like real people trying to do that, like AI is screening because there's so many applicants that are coming in for a job, and so you got to be able to break through that. And there are ways that you can, and I think that one of the top ways is your network, and that is knowing someone there, reaching out to someone like an actual human with an actual like email or social media of your choice, and just talking to them as a real human, and then having all of that, the bona fides like your video conference talks or projects or LinkedIn, all of that. But that I think is like the best in right now is through networking. And that's what companies are looking for too. It's like, we want to hire the best, and the people that we have hired know the best, what to look for.
So let's break down a little bit of what that looks like, especially if you're not actively looking right now, but you're trying to get yourself ready because you know the environment is rough and maybe you will have to be looking at a point. So you can be kind of warming your network now by just reaching out to people that you know, used to work with, et cetera, and saying, hey, like, let's catch up. Let's talk about coffee. Like, heaven knows there's a lot going on in the industry and the world to talk about. And it doesn't have to be a, hey, this is a networking conversation, or it could be explicit. It's like, just, I'm keeping my eyes out, but I want to hear what's going on. What are you up to? Like, let's talk about this. How, I think a really valuable way to make that not feel parasitic, which I think is a thing a lot of folks worry about with that, is one, like, focus most of it on just like catching up and reconnecting with somebody that you actually are interested in talking to, right? Hopefully you have people that you've worked with before that you are interested in talking to. Ask them how they're doing, what they're up to, what they're working on, all those different things. But the other is whether or not you're asking for something, which you might be, maybe you're asking for a referral or something, but also ask them, is there any way I can be helpful to you? Like, how can I support you? Because we're all going through this mess.
I think that's a great point, just to emphasize, like, you don't have to be looking to do all of this, and it's way better to like have primed that pump before you really need it. And so, plus you get the added benefit of being social with people, which is a benefit to some people. But yeah, just like keeping in contact with people. And you can use it as like, oh, I'm doing the silly LinkedIn thing, or, let's grab coffee. Let's synergize, use fancy corporate terms.
I mean, you only need the most tiny little excuse for it to feel natural and to be kind of natural, right? So, example, I was helping someone through this. They have someone that they never worked with, but they were like adjacent to them at some point in the past. They wanted to reach out to them, and they're trying to figure out how. And I was like, well, why do you want to reach out to them? Oh, I was doing this thing and I saw they were doing something, they're the CEO of their company and something just happened. Like, that's awesome. Okay. I was doing this thing and it reminded me of you. Would you like, be interested in catching up a little bit? Like, the worst they can say is no, but in this case, it turned into, oh, that would be great. I haven't heard from you in forever. It would be good. Wonderful to catch up, right? Like, it can be the tiniest little excuse. I saw an article that reminded me of you. Or I was looking at old chat messages, or I don't know, just something was like, oh, you came to mind and I realized we haven't caught up in a long time. Would you be interested? Like, many people will appreciate that.
Well, I think the key is to do it, you said before you need it, but also if you keep going to people every time that you need something from them, then that's a huge turnoff. They're not going to want to help you in the same way that if you've maintained that relationship over time, then when you do need something, they're more than happy to help.
So we can do a whole show on networking. There's a whole bunch of other stuff and techniques that we could talk about there. But what else are each of you doing, knowing kind of the world that we're in and the uncertainty and those feelings of, gosh, I don't know what's coming. Like, I have that also. Like, I don't know what to expect. I'm at a startup. Are we going to be around in a year? Like, I don't know. So yeah, what are you doing to kind of get yourself ready, even if it's just like emotionally ready for that turmoil?
I think first, could we level set on all of the existential dread that is creeping in? Because I don't think it's just the economy right now.
True,
for software
fair.
developers. A lot of it is AI too. Like, you see these mandates from companies saying that we're not going to increase headcount until you prove that your team can't be more efficient with AI. And then you've got people just like, using agents to just left and right ship things that are of varying quality, but still shipping nonetheless. It's better than not shipping. And we've had that. That's like another attack on us specifically in this industry. Along with the zero interest rate phenomenon going away. And so like, it's been a tough time, and there's a lot of different things that have come to this. And even if the economy was going super great, like, AI is still there coming potentially, or potentially not, who knows? And so but we have that to contend with right now.
Well, and we kind of started talking about our age and whether we have experienced recessions before or not. And my first thought was, man, I'm so glad we're all seniors and we're not coming into the industry right now. But it's also hard to be a senior because you're a lot more expensive. And when you start looking at cutting costs, it's easier to cut your seniors and just hope that you can hire more juniors or mid-level people that will compensate.
So back to the question of what am I doing? I don't know.
Quietly sitting in your room, biting your nails, crying in a corner. I mean, honestly, like that is a thing that you could be doing, and it's not shameful to say like, hey, I'm frozen. Like, I don't know what to do with this. It's just terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not doing anything really differently than what I normally do, but what I normally do is kind of a lot, like going to conferences, going to meetups, organizing where I can, and trying to be active in GitHub and occasionally blogging, though that's hard, just because I'm lazy and don't like writing. But yeah, I don't know. Thinking about what manual I'd be interested in.
You did mention a few things in there, right? Going to conferences and meetups. Conferences are expensive. Maybe you can't go, though you can apply to speak, which is the greatest hack for getting to conferences. They'll pay your way if you do it. And some conferences are explicitly looking for new speakers. So if you haven't done it before, like there's support systems. But meetups tend to be very cheap and or free, especially if you're in a city. There's going to be a fair number of them around. And it does kind of exactly what you were talking about earlier of like getting you in contact with real people and showing that you are a real person, and building that network that the show is, I think, inevitably going to keep coming back to, as the place where you can have a little bit of resiliency. But you're building that by just showing up and hanging out with people.
I'd also say if you can find a Discord community to be a part of, like that's cheap too. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to travel. And I know for me, sometimes Discord can be overwhelming, but if you just find one server that you decide I'm going to be active, and even if that's too much, just find one channel on the server to say, this is my channel and I'm going to respond to everybody that posts in this channel if I can be helpful. Or if there's an open source project that you can contribute to, that's another way to get people to notice the things that you're doing and what you're contributing to. I was going to ask you, Nick, so the stuff that you're doing now is open source. So do you feel like you've seen a difference now that more of stuff that you're doing is publicly available?
A difference how?
Well, before, I'm assuming most of your stuff is covered under an NDA, so you can't even talk about it. But now it's the exact opposite, where people can see the code that you write. They can see how you're providing support and helping other people and how you talk about code and think about code. So at least for me, because my work is also open source, I like to believe that is also help with resiliency, and that the more people I can help, the stronger that's going to make my own network.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I haven't tested it is the problem. And I also have never really leaned into my network, if that makes sense. Like, I've always kind of cold gone for jobs because I don't want to I feel that awkwardness of I don't want to put you in any weird position, and I don't want to feel like I'm, I don't know, asking for too big of a favor or something.
Sure.
So it's something I need to work on for sure. I don't think that it's because of this, but I have seen, I think in the last month, 2 emails from recruiters, whereas the last year or 2 has been 0. But I think that's a sign of the times, right? It's just people aren't hiring. But I do feel better about having, if I were to be going for another job, I've got a big GitHub presence now, much bigger than last year, where I wasn't on GitHub really at all. So it was very sparse in terms of contributions. But now, yeah, it's quite a lot.
One thing we haven't talked about, but that I think is also, it's not engineering specific or anything, but if you see these times of uncertainty, it can be valuable to look at how you can sort of create stability in your financial situation ahead of time. So like, look at your expenses. Are there any things that you can cut or be ready to cut if something does happen? Make sure you have a bit of a cushion, right? Look at what it takes to apply for unemployment if you're worried about that, right? Like all these different things so that, I mean, if you're paralyzed by dread, which, as I said, you would not be alone, having a little bit of an understanding of, oh, okay, if this happens, I could get unemployment for 8 weeks or something, whatever it is, and that would be this amount, and I could cut these expenses, and that would give me enough to live on, so I'd have 6 months to find a job, or whatever it is, right? Like, for me, having that,
Assuming
like,
the value of the dollar stays anywhere near where it's at.
well, okay, so
Making it worse.
yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that, you know, the fact that ever since the guy up in the president's office put all these tariffs on, that we're just going to stop having any goods from China and the shelves will be empty and you won't be able to get anything, but that's going to impact us whether we have a job or not. So let's control what we have control over. You know, maybe you want to get laid off so you can start picketing the White House and say, like, you know, I don't know. We have no control over the idiocy of the people running the government right now. And whether they, you know, people argue about whether they are trying to do reasonable things and just incompetent at it, or they're trying to do bad things. And I don't want to take that political stance, though my politics are pretty open. But I think we can all argue that, or see that, the current economic situation, as evidenced by the data today, is going down. So we have no control over that. We have control over us. So know what your situation is, right? Like, I think I remember working with a coaching client who was like super stressed about losing his job. And I said, okay, well, like, if that happens, like, what do your finances look like? What would have to happen? He said, I have no idea. I have no idea if I lose my job, are we missing mortgage payments next month, or do I have some cushion? And that was terrifying. And one of the most effective things we did to navigate that fear was just like get some idea of what the situation is, because then you can react to it and then you can plan around it. But if you have no idea, it's just like, it's going to hit you. You don't get any control.
Yep. If you're
We're all just trying to hide our dread right now.
Well, you know, I was thinking one of the things that we've done is we have a financial advisor that helps run all these models to say, if this happens, then consider this, or we can talk about this. And a lot of times, like, you don't have to necessarily have money in order to have that. What I mean by that is a lot of times they'll take their fees based on their investment. So if you do well, they do well. So I just say that if you're like, I don't have budget to pay for a financial advisor, you don't necessarily have to have budget for that, because they want to help you, and in seeing you succeed, they succeed as well.
So a topic we haven't talked about too much is learning, right? So we're in this time of turmoil. There's lots of change. And I think another thing that you can do to prepare is, especially if you've been in a job where you have not been able to sort of keep up with the changing state of the world, is to find some time to learn, right? And what you're learning may depend on your specialty, right? Like, I think there are still people out there maintaining sites that use jQuery and other very old technologies. If you are in that position, before you have to find a new job, you might want to make sure that you're up to speed with React or Svelte or Vue or something, one of these more modern frameworks. I think there's a lot of developers out there resisting learning about LLMs because the technology is being sold as a magic cure-all, and engineers, being naturally skeptical, are like, this isn't for me. I tried one way, it didn't work. It's just a technology like any other technology that you've worked with. There's a tremendous amount of money flowing into it. So if you're looking for jobs, many of them will be touching this stuff. And if you haven't spent the time to learn, like, what are these things under the covers? How do they work? How do you interact with them as a developer? What are their limitations, but also their actual real capabilities? Like, that's a very valuable place to be learning right now, because there's so much in the industry. Like, that's the one part of the industry that feels like it's growing.
Yeah. To that end, it feels almost like a little bit of an interesting like bifurcation, right? Like, because you've got people that aren't learning about those simply because they're prohibited at their workplace. Like, there's a lot of jobs where you're just not able to use them, or if you are, it's at a very limited scope, like GitHub Copilot completion or something like that. Like, that's the extent. And then you've got other people who are like, I'm vibe coding all day, man. It's really easy and fun and all that. And like, that's where the bifurcation comes in, because like, I think once you go LLM, could I be hireable at a company that's going to restrict me from being able to easily use that?
Well, so there's a couple different things you could be talking about here, right? So what you're describing is using LLM-based coding tools, which is a place where there's a lot of bifurcation.
Yeah.
But I think even like stepping back a layer and sort of understanding what is the technology underneath those, right? Like, going back to, how do machine learning models work? What does it mean if something is probabilistic rather than deterministic and you're building a software system around it? Like, a huge number of these software systems that we are building in the industry now have somewhere in them one of these probabilistic models. And so, like, starting to understand what that means. And there's tools out there to play with that, maybe not in your work context, but like, download something like Ollama and play with local models. And you can't run a really big one. That's actually in a lot of ways better for learning, because the little ones, they break in the same ways as the big ones do, but they break at a much simpler place. So you can start to see, like, how does this actually work? What is it actually doing? And then when you start using the larger models, a lot of the things that broke the smaller ones will still work, but you'll still see the same like types of systematic mistakes. And so you'll have a bit of more of an understanding of how these things work. So yeah, I think, I'm not answering your question at all of, can I go back if I've been LLM pilled on development tools? But I think that's not the only, right? You can believe that those are terrible for software development and you don't want to use them in their current state, and still acknowledge that a lot of software is being built around these tools, and it might be worth understanding how that technology works.
Yeah. But we've got teams like Shopify that are like, basically, we want you to use LLMs in every aspect that you possibly can to move as fast as you possibly can. And then you might have like an insurance company that is like, nope, that's not coming anywhere near us. And so like, the pool of jobs switches depending on what camp you're in and what you're willing to tolerate. Maybe you don't want to go back to a non-LLM world, or maybe you don't want to jump into an LLM filled like crazy fest where robots are writing half of the things and you have to debug all of this AI slop. It cuts both ways, and it's further bifurcating the already shrinking market.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some of that was already true, in the sense that, like, I didn't want to work at a company that had to deal with HIPAA already. Like, I just didn't want to write code in that environment. And that was an existing situation. I don't really want to be writing software that's going into a medical device that people's lives depend on. Just like, I don't want that stress. There are some people who love that kind of lockdown. Like, this is mission critical. I can spend as long as I want, but it's got to be right. Like, that's a very particular environment that some people thrive in and others do not. So I'm not sure. I think this is maybe on a bigger scale. It's definitely happening more, but like, that type of subdivision of the industry already existed.
That's fair, for sure.
What would you focus on learning, Nick? What are you focused on learning?
I'm learning how to, I don't know. I'm learning how to use these tools to make myself more productive. And I'm jumping around a lot of different languages right now, which is fun. And I think good for like future jobs, because they'll be able to say, yeah, I have real experience in all these languages. And that's way better than kind of being pigeonholed into one, even if it is the best language, Jared. Sorry. But
Hashtag TypeScript, or whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that like I'm learning how to learn with them. I don't want it to write code for me for the most part, but I do view it as like almost like it is the best rubber duck I've ever had, and I can rubber duck it to no end and have like real tangible things come out of it, and it can push back on some of my like false assumptions on things, and that's useful. That's very useful, even if it's not writing a lot of the code for me just yet.
What about you, Amy? What are you learning?
Yep. Well, kind of on my list is MCP servers, because I've written like cursor rules and prompts and things like that. But to me, the next level is actually writing MCP server functions and things like that. So it's on my list. I haven't gone down that path yet. But a lot of the stuff that I focused on learning is just getting really good at frameworks. So knowing this is how Astro does it, it's how Svelte does it, this is how Next does it, and now Redwood SDK, and being able to compare all those just to be able to bring some better understanding to the work that I'm doing at work as we're trying to develop a framework. Kind of nuance to that, it's been really interesting lately trying to wrap my head around React Server components, because I've looked at it within Next, but that's really the only context that people understand it as. And so the lines have blurred between what React is and what Next is. And so we are getting to a good spot with Redwood SDK and being able to come in and say, that's not a Next thing, it's a React 19 thing, or like this is how we're going to explore this particular set of functionality. So anyways, that's been really interesting, trying to kind of separate those things and being able to put labels on them.
What about you, KBall?
What about you?
What am I learning about? I go back and forth about whether I should just leave this whole industry because it is a wild ride. I think the biggest set of things that I've been working on learning and trying to figure out are, one, I've been deep diving on LLMs. We had a show recently about that and talking some about deep diving on how they work, what are they useful for, how do we use them better, what are they not useful for, trying to figure out if I can, at least for myself, describe like what makes for a really crappy AI slop product and what makes for something that's actually useful. One rule of thumb that I actually came to recently that I really like is like, these things are really helpful if they are helping you think and letting you access to information that you would love to already be getting, but don't have the time or ability to go and get. So like an example, I was talking with someone who's like doing some consulting and they're having lots of meetings, and then they have a tool that is both doing transcripts and summaries of all those meetings and lets them say, oh, what did so-and-so think about this? And it goes and like pulls all the relevant information from all the different transcripts and collates it together. Now, he's still doing the thinking, but the AI is making it possible to very rapidly go and look over much more information than he would be able to process himself and pull out the answers to the questions he has as he's doing that thinking. That's super valuable. Nick, your example of using it to rubber duck and talk through, right? You're doing the thinking. It's helping you through that process. So I think where and on the flip side, right, tools that are trying to replace your thinking generally fall very, very flat and cause big problems. And so like that's a big area that I've been trying to think of as like not only understanding the technology, but then like what are the implications for the types of products we should be building with it, which I could tell you is a needed skill out in the market. I'm not claiming to be good at it, but like looking at all the products being built with this stuff, most people do not have the skill of asking like, what is this actually good for or not? They're building a lot of crap. So like, yeah, that big domain of things. And then the other thing that I'm really trying to learn a lot about right now is, or like understand and think about is, it's clear to me that these are changing the way that software is done on an individual basis. Individuals are writing code differently. It is changing the cost of different types of code, right? Like the speed of writing Greenfield's code is much higher. Maintenance, in some ways it can be helpful, in some ways not. There's like, it's changing a lot. I have over the last 20 years in the industry built up a lot of like heuristics about how expensive things are going to be or how to structure teams. And what I'm trying to understand is like, how do these tools change those things? Because I think they do. I think the number of engineers you're going to want on a team is going to change. I think the way that you decide your build versus buy questions for different third-party packages and stuff like that is going to change. And so just trying to wrap my head around that. And I don't have any good resources for it because nobody knows yet. So it's more like experimentation and just kind of thinking about it.
Yeah, KBall, to your first point about using it to keep you in the know and like you're making the decisions. The way that I've been thinking about that is like I spend a lot of time like managing and worrying about the context that the AI knows about, getting it the right relevant data. But in the end, it's the context that it's building in me that is the most important.
Yeah, if you want the meta word that is both for how to understand LLMs and what they're useful for, it's all about context. What context do you give it? What context is it giving you? The problem is context is kind of means everything. So it doesn't actually guide you very much.
Oh man. So I was working on something the other day, trying to get it to help me to think. And right now it's been very agreeable. Actually read an article this morning about that. And I was trying to tell it to feed additional context. Like, please, I'm trying to think through all angles of this. Let's be devil's advocate if you need to, but let's push back on this, and trying to use that to help me to think. But I did think that was interesting that it was, I think, Morning Brew or The Skim, something like that. It was a secular news source that was talking about how agreeable OpenAI is and how that's not benefiting everybody, and how Sam Altman finally came back and said, oh, this is a bug, we'll fix it. But I just thought that was interesting that people didn't necessarily want positivity in their responses. They don't necessarily want a yes person. They want somebody that's going to challenge the way that they think about stuff.
Yes, this is so important. I'll send you this and I'll put it in the show notes, but I have a prompt that when it starts becoming too agreeable, I just add this in, and it really does help it quite a bit. Specifically, Claude is the one I'm using the most. But it just starts off with like, avoid simply agreeing with my points or taking my conclusions at face value. And then there's a bunch of different bullet points on what it does. But it's really helpful at like making it kind of be a little contrarian about what you're saying, or at least not just blindly agreeing and saying that, wow, you're the smartest human I've ever talked to. Claude does refer to me as the human now if you watch its thinking.
The human one. That's hilarious. So fun technique you can use for this also, which is just tell it it's more than one personality, right? So instead of like treating it like a person that you're interacting with, you say, hey, all right, you are three people. One tends to agree with things. One's a super skeptic. One's an expert in some other domain. Each of you analyze this, tell what it is, argue out between you, and then create a summarized result or something like that. And like you can watch them like dialogue against each other. And to your point, right, you get multiple perspectives on this thing. So like whatever your topic area is, maybe you're doing software, right? Like, okay, one of you is a junior developer who's going to try to understand that. He should ask all the questions. One of you is and the stupid questions. One's a software architect, analyze from these things. Like give it, don't fall into the trap of thinking it's a actual thing you're chatting with. Like give it many personalities. Let them fight it out. Let them explore this possibility space, and then give you some answers.
I never
My
thought
mind's
to do
just
that.
blown.
Wow.
Fun fact, you can simulate applications or APIs this way. Just tell it you are an API. Design a YAML DSL for yourself that allows you to do A, B, C, and D. All right, output in the functions that you're calling. Now do this. And it will like go through, and you can just like simulate applications that way and explore different. Yeah. Don't think of it as a human. This is the thing, right? Like, and this is a place where and we're getting distracted into LLMs, which is fine.
Always,
This is my fascination
always.
space, right? Like, I think that ChatGPT in particular, but OpenAI in general, has done the world a huge disservice by presenting these things in a form factor that is we are chatting with another thing there. Now, to be fair, it was a genius product move because it went viral in the way none of this stuff does. But what it does is it makes us sort of operate at a level of abstraction where you lose a lot of the power of the tools, and you also kind of default into thinking there's a mind there. And so then when it makes mistakes that minds don't make, because it's not a mind, it's very frustrating. This is why I say, like, install Olama or something and play with the raw stuff. Like, these things are another form of computation. They are data in, data out, with algorithms that are defined by a combination of training data and the text you're putting in. And you can use them to do all sorts of fascinating types of computations that look nothing like a single person conversing with another being.
KBall, I'm hearing that you don't say thank you to your LLM.
Oh, I absolutely do. I absolutely
Me
do.
too, just in case. Just in case. That's so interesting.
You could tell it how to think too,
But
right? Like, these thinking models are like, oh, this adds a lot. Well, but they're one particular type of thinking. But you might be an expert, right, on the thing you're trying to do, and you say, okay, I want you to think this through, and when you do, evaluate this, evaluate this, evaluate this, look at this and this and this, and that once again kind of guides it into the part of the latent space of the model that is more likely to give you useful outcomes.
But like, even in just how we're talking about it, we still added like personifications, talking about thinking or reasoning. And it's
Yeah,
like, it's running a process.
It's very, what's the word? Like, insidious. Like, it just gets in. It's hard to not. And to be fair, right? Like, the reason it has stuck so well is that it's a very convenient mental model, and it works very well across a fairly large class of interactions with us. But just like when you are programming, like, all abstractions are leaky, and you can build the most powerful software if you are able to operate at multiple levels of abstraction, right? Like, if you only understand front end and what's more, only understand React, you're going to struggle when you hit something that doesn't fit in its mental model. But if you also understand the network stack, and you also understand how you can do things on the server, and you also understand these different layers, the space of problems that you can solve is much, much larger. And the same thing is very much true when you think about interacting with LLMs, which are in many ways just another form of computational system.
Awkward silence.
So, recession proofing yourself.
It's so interesting right now. Like, where we sit right now is very interesting because, I don't know, we're either overestimating or underestimating how bad it's going to be. As we like literally sit here with reports that, docks are empty and no ships are coming in and Docker containers are being erased, and I was trying to work.
You're trying to tie it back into software, yeah.
Docker system prune is happening in real life.
Here's the thing that's really happening, right? Software engineers are being laid off to free up more money for GPUs.
True. Yeah. Yeah. It just feels like a lot of attacks on the job market, specifically for us, but also for everyone. So we're not special in that case. But I don't know. It's easier to not think about it and just hope that things are fine. That's not a great plan, but also mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I think because there's so much uncertainty, you can't plan too far ahead. But like, something I was just talking about it with my coach at some point, and he was saying, like, if you've studied complex systems, which I have, like, you know that in periods of large uncertainty, what you want to do is sort of invest in resilience of the system and capacity, so that you can, when something comes in, have the ability to react to it. So we don't know if the future holds mass layoffs or just stumbling forward as things are, or even a dramatic recovery. Could happen. But we know there's this wide swath of uncertainty, and it feels like the risk to tech careers is higher than it's been. So, it may be a time to put more energy than you might otherwise in broadening your base, understanding new technologies, in building your network, in building a financial cushion, in whatever those things are that are going to give you the resilience to react as stuff comes in. We're still freaking out in the corner, huh?
It's hard to know what to say because it's such a weighty topic, right? And the truth is, I feel like I have no answers.
Actually, so another thing on this is always be interviewing. Particularly if you are someone who is uncomfortable with interviews, it is a thing that you can become more accustomed to. It is a thing that if you are uncomfortable with it and you have not done anything like that in a long time, it will get in your way and you will struggle. And so if you are worried about losing your job and having to apply for new jobs, a way to be more prepared and maybe reduce that worry is to practice interviewing. And that doesn't have to be real interviews, though it could be, right? It could be actually applying to jobs, even if you don't intend to take them. But it could also be just doing mock interviews with people. There's lots of different stuff out there, or you can find a buddy and be like, all right, you interview me, I'll interview you. But like getting some reps in so that, once again, like if it does happen, it's not this terrifying thing that you haven't touched in 5 years. It's like, oh yeah, I don't know how to have that conversation.
Yeah, that's great advice too, to stay on top of interviewing trends. Because as people are using AI to cheat interviews are changing to combat that. And so knowing what to expect and understanding what you need to learn and how you need to prepare, I think is a really good skill.
Yeah. Do you have any particular examples?
I don't. I just saw this startup that raised money for it's literally like, here's how to cheat with AI on Zoom calls. And it just puts a window that's invisible to Zoom for you to talk to an LLM on.
This is poisoning the well. This is the same thing. Don't do that. Seriously, don't do that. This is like the AI slop job interviews that I was talking before. It makes it better for no one. There are zero people in the world who, hiring managers are not benefiting from the race to AI tools for AI generated resumes or resume analysis. Job applicants are not benefiting. If you're using an LLM to fake an interview, that benefits no one. That does not benefit you, because when they figure that out, not only are you going to be up shit creek because you don't know a thing they expect you to know, you will have lied, right? You can use an LLM in an interview. Just be upfront. Be like, hey, for this, I would use an LLM. Can I do it? And if they say no, and that's something about how you do your work, then you say, okay, then I'm not interested in this job because this is how I do my work now, right? I think the turning it into an arms race of I'm going to cheat and can you catch me cheating? Who does that help? That doesn't help anyone.
Yeah. I think it's just catching up with the times, right? Because for a long time it was oh, you should just know this stuff, not Google, how to do a bubble sort or something. I would Google what built-in sorting utilities does my language or framework have, and use that. And so now it seems, I don't know, in every interview I've done, it's totally normal to Google for things. I assume that we'll be there with LLMs too, eventually.
Paul Graham's also talked a little bit about this publicly and said, like, especially for senior level people, to ensure that they're not just using AI for everything, their final interviews will most likely be in person. Whether the job is remote or in person, the final interview will be in person. That way they can see you, they can interact with you and know how you are. And I think, that's good from a culture standpoint, not just a knowledge check perspective. A few other things that I've seen, to go back to your question about trends, my resume for a while, I gave it to my former manager because he knew I was looking for jobs a while back. And he was like, let me see your resume, your CV. And I sent it to him. He's like, this is terrible. He just told me straight up, your resume is terrible. But it's because it was written in the same format that I was like popular when I graduated from college. But now it's like they want to use OCR to be able to read that. They don't want anything designed. They want it formatted so they can standardize it. My resume isn't how they're judging my design skills. It's my portfolio. And so putting things in your resume or your CV that say this is the benefits that I bring to the table, instead of necessarily just saying this is the task that I did, explain how that benefited people. I think that's really, in the interviews I've had, what people are looking for. They want to know how is this feature going to be helpful.
Yeah, and to that, just like the style of your resume too. Like we said, it's probably has to get through an AI filter first. And if you have a very bespoke resume that looks very good, is very pretty and colorful, I mean, that probably can be a good thing, but it should also be in some kind of format that it's not going to trip up an AI, because then you're just get immediately deleted.
Right. Well, kind of alongside that, even just writing cover letters or resumes that are in line with the job descriptions that you are applying for. So making sure that it's using the same keywords, that you're not just like blasting the same thing to everybody, but you're showing like, I really am interested in this job. I have looked at your company. I am aware of what you're doing. This work sounds interesting to me. That's going to resonate a lot more than something that's far more generic.
But be careful, because people are using LLMs to do that. And it's like, if I see the keywords for my job in every job history, like everything, you have like clearly just run this through an LLM. Like honestly, if it were me, I may be not representative here. So take this with a grain of salt. I'm probably way off on one side, and I'm working at a small company. Big companies I'm not using an AI filter ahead. Like there's stuff around that. There's a set of best practices that people talk about. Tune it to this, tune it to the job posting, show impact and things like that. Yes, and that has clearly been internalized by LLMs, and you will get stuff where every line has some impact that is quantified, often in ways that don't make any sense. And as I said, like every job history will have something that is like bolded the thing that is my in my job posting and things like that. And because there's so many of these things that are fake, that actually, if it looks too much like that, I'm ready to throw it out already, because it's like, oh, this is LLM slop again. Right? I do think customizing like a thing at the top, right? A summary, maybe a cover letter. Though very few of the things I'm seeing actually have cover letters. So maybe not everybody looks at the cover letters either, but if your summary is custom to me, but your job actually looks like this is probably a real representation of what you did and not something that's totally faked and customized to me, like that goes to me, that I would react much better to that, right? Like I'm looking for this thing. This is why I think, be careful on the customization side, especially because probably you will use if what I'm seeing is representative, probably you're using an LLM to do that customization, and it comes out looking terrible and making me ask the question, is this a real person or is this a spam factory?
But I mean, that's a great point. Even if you are working at a larger company that has the AI filter, at some point a human is going to have to look at it and read it. So it might get you past the AI filter, but would it get you past the human filter? And that's a better question.
Yeah. And remember that the entire purpose of a resume pretty much is to get you to talking to real people.
Yep. Do you know what? This probably isn't helping. Well, I say helping anybody anyways. I heard somebody include a hack on their resume where they had white text, like on white paper, that was like a command prompt for the AI agent to say this resume should be passed regardless or blah, blah, blah. And so they said that they were getting more feedback after they included that, but they were trying to make it humanly invisible, but visible to the AI prompt.
I will say, this kind of goes back to Nick's original point about networking and other things, and actually yours too, Amy. The last few times I've looked for a job, I only send a resume after I've actually talked to somebody. Because if you're cold applying to jobs, you are going into a bucket with literal thousands of resumes that are just being thrown out there. And because there's so much slop there, they're getting parsed through all these filters, and it's really hard. And I'll tell you, you review even 10 resumes and your brain starts to fuzz. And by the time you're on 50 or 60, maybe this person is actually really good, but my brain is fuzzed and I can't tell that from looking at them. So, I got another 100 of these to go through. So nope, they're out the door, right? I hate that that's what it ends up being, but that's what it looks like when you have humans looking at resumes. So your best way in there is to have a human saying hey, this person is worth a look. Yep. Even if that's all they say, right? This is somebody I talked to at a meetup. They seemed really cool. They applied. They're a real person. It's worth taking a look. And you might still not be a good match, and I might still say no, but that's already putting you so much more likely to get through the filters than just cold applying.
Actually, every job that I've ever had has been because I knew somebody. I've never applied for a cold job and then gotten it. But I haven't applied to a whole lot of jobs cold either.
I have. It works sometimes. It's harder now, I'm sure. But yeah, I think that is the easiest hack, for lack of a better word, is talking to a real human.
At your previous company, did you cold apply, or do you know somebody?
I actually did go through a referral for that.
Okay.
I Meta.
I was just curious because that's a FANG company, so that would have been a much bigger process.
Yeah. That was my second time too. I had gone all the way through to being flown out there for an interview in 2017, I think, not getting it. So this was my second time through.
Well, do we have any final words for how to make yourself resilient to the tech economy in 2025?
May the odds ever be in your favor.
Yeah, I think it's going to be different for everyone.
Pulling out your bow and arrow, taking out the other engineers.
Noodles.